Hello internet, my name is Lave and I watched War for the Planet of the Apes, which is directed by Matt Reeves, who directed the last film Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which was a sequel to Rise of the Planet of the Apes, directed by Rupert Wyatt. Picking up a few years after the events that unfolded in Dawn, Caesar and his apes are now hiding in the forest and are using guerrilla warfare tactics, pun intended, to take on the human army who have come down from the north and are hell-bent on assassinating Caesar and taking out his species, all led by a ruthless colonel played by Woody Harrelson. Now, as far as the plot goes, that's as much as I'm willing to say without going into spoilers. Suffice to say, events unfold which put Caesar and the Colonel on a collision course. And I'll also say that it is bigger and better in its scope, but not at the expense of telling a very personal, heartfelt, emotional, character-driven story. As much as this film is about the war for the planet, it is really about the war between the Colonel and Caesar. Now, I'm sure I'm not the only one who had reservations about Woody Harrelson being cast in this film. I just wasn't sure if I was going to buy him as this military leader. But now that I've seen the film, it's very clear that they cast him because he can play unhinged really very well. He definitely has shades of Marlon Brando's Colonel Kurtz from Apocalypse Now. Now, I wouldn't go as far to say that he isn't a fleshed out character. It's just that his motivations are very similar to other characters that we've seen in this franchise. You could argue that had Gary Oldman's character survived the last film, he would have become Woody Harrelson's character. Having said that, Woody Harrelson's performance is completely functional in this film. He's intimidating. As I say, he's really unhinged. He's got this cult leader status amongst his men. It works. But that's okay because this is Caesar's story. It's a perfect extension to what we've already seen, and Andy Serkis is simply brilliant as Caesar. You get to see the effects that war has on him, and you see his compassion slowly evaporate away, and he becomes a much more vengeful Caesar than we've ever seen before. And what's really cool is that you get to see more of the other apes that you've only seen glimpses of in the previous films. Rocket makes a welcome return. He was really sidelined in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and of course my favourite, and possibly everyone else's favourite, is my man Maurice. Maurice? Yeah, that's right. All of the apes' performances and the performance capture is absolutely top notch, and then like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, the visual effects that brings these apes to life is just simply jaw-dropping. They raise the bar with Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. It's the benchmark which every other film is compared to, and they've done it again. It's just simply jaw-dropping. The jumping quality isn't as noticeable as it was from Rise to Dawn, but then Dawn was just simply perfection. It just feels a bit more refined. There's really some nice tight close-up shots of the apes, and it looks so real. With the added 3D effect, you just feel like you can reach out and touch every fur and hair follicle. It's absolutely amazing. Weta, take a bow. Yeah, every other visual effects supervisor must be thinking, well, there goes the Oscar. Damn. Now, I also want to point out that the original Planet of the Apes film made us hold up a mirror to ourselves, and it was commentating on racism, and you could argue that Rise and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes sort of lost that, but certainly the symbolism and the metaphors are back in this film. This time around, it's reflecting our own history with war imagery very reminiscent of the Nazi concentration camps, and I definitely think it's commentating on current affairs happening in America with a tyrannical leader and talks of walls being built. There's even a shot where the American flag is burning and it falls to the ground because of Caesar. In retrospect, it's not too subtle, but I definitely think it's there and worth mentioning. But before this video gets too political, let's move on to something else. So this is a war movie. It's got war in the title, and I would lump it in the war category genre, but it's also mixing in a couple of other genres as well. It's a revenge movie of sorts. It's also a road movie. It also turns into a prison escape movie as well, and it rolls them all into one, and never at the expense of telling this deeply emotional, really emotional, personal character study. In terms of some negatives, I do have a couple of little niggly points. There's a couple of unnecessary slow-mo shots in there. I mean, it looks cool, looks great and all that, but it just felt a bit unnecessary. I felt that it would have been more impactful had those events happened in real time. And also there's a couple of moments with Easter eggs, which is of course referring to the original Planet of the Apes films, and I'm all up for Easter eggs. It's always fun to find them and point them out, but in this one, certain characters have names from characters from the original, and it just brought me out of the film because I wasn't sure if they were actually the same character from those films. I'm not sure how they could be. It just brought me out of the film because it's so on the nose. When you hear Cornelius or Nova, you're like, is that the same person or is it meant to be? I'm not sure. It just made me question in the middle of the film, when I didn't really want to be thinking about that, if this is actually a prequel to the original or not. And I still don't know. I think it is just a nod. And the only other criticism that I can think of involves a new chimp which we haven't seen before called Bad Ape, who's played by Zahn. Now I really like his character, but he does feel like he's just been dropped in to give moments of levity, and they were funny. Some bits really made me laugh. There's a bit where he pokes his head out of the ground and he's just like looking around. It was hilarious. I'm really conflicted because I did really like the character. He's played really well and he is funny, but tonally I can see that he doesn't really fit in the film. I think if you cut his character, the film would still work. It would be much bleaker, but still, it's a film about war. And I'm also not sure that I buy, or maybe I just don't understand his origin. I don't want to say too much more in case of spoilers, but his appearance, all of the other apes are like, how did you get here? And his explanation, I'm not sure I bought it. But other than those minor criticisms, this is an amazing film. It's a complete spectacle, which is character driven, it's emotional, it's exciting. I absolutely loved it. It just cements Caesar as one of the best characters ever created. So that's my thoughts on War for the Planet of the Apes, and pause the video if you want to take a closer look at my enjoyment tracker now. To give you an idea of how good this trilogy of films is, I watched Rise and then Dawn and then War back to back to back, and I was never bored. I absolutely loved it. It's such a perfect trilogy of films, and if anything, it makes me want to watch Planet of the Apes again and think, wow, that's because of that. I mean, this film explains a lot of things which I frustratingly can't explain because of spoilers, but there's a massive plot device in this film which explains a massive part of Planet of the Apes. And I'm also sure that they filmed in the location where Charlton Heston's character comes down and lands in that lake. I'm sure it's the same place, but I'm gonna watch it again to make sure. But overall, what a trilogy of films, arguably the best there has ever been. So if you're on the fence about going to see this film, if you want my opinion, you should absolutely go! So thanks very much for watching my review of War for the Planet of the Apes. I really do appreciate it. If you can, give this video a like, and don't forget to share the lave. Ooh, that was pretty good.